Alright, hello fun and welcome back to my Fallout 4 Mod Spotlight series, where today we are having a look at the Fall-UI HUD mod, which is being made by user M8R98A4F2. And what this glorious little piece of work looks to add into the game is a powerful new tool to allow you to, well, customize the UI elements within your game, and it is pretty darn wonderful as it allows you to take control of each individual UI element and change its position, its size, even things like rotation. It is pretty darn wonderful. So let's take a look at exactly what we do get here, and we need to start by actually going over a mod requirement. You are going to want to have the mod configuration menu, as that gives you the ability to change all these things here in game quite easily, and giving you the ability to quickly do things like what I did, and you've probably already noticed, by putting my compass up to the top of my screen. 4 reasons. Good times. So let's jump on into the mod configuration menu here and head to the Fall-UI HUD. Now we'll be greeted by this lovely image showing some of the things that are possible with this, which is pretty cool. And we're going to go straight into the layout because this is the real meat and potatoes of this entire thing. This is where all of the editing occurs, and it is wonderful, though does kind of look like a little bit of a mess when you first come in here, because it is showing every individual different UI element that you have available in the game. Now, you can sort of filter those out by the filter widgets up here. So if you don't want to see everything, you can take a look at just notifications, your quest UI elements, your exploration elements, and of course your assault combat elements. So you can make sure everything is just what you're wanting to edit, rather than dealing with this just monstrosity of everything, which is pretty nice. So you can very quickly and easily find exactly what it is that you want to then edit. Now, over along the left-hand side here, we have some very nice basic tools. The first is profiles, and this is quite cool. So you can have at any given point in time 3 different profiles of things you've edited. So if you are, doing very specific things one day, you may want to be using profile 2, but if you're just like a normal everyday thing, you might want your UI to be profile 1, etc. And you can switch between these when you desire, which is pretty cool. Now, then under that, we do have tools here. The first is Revert Last Changes, and this is basically an undo button, which is very handy when you've made some edits you don't care about. Now, there are also some other ways to do that, which we'll get into in a moment, but this is nice to have an undo. Now, the next button here you'll see is Import Layout, and this is actually a pretty cool feature. Once you are done creating whatever UI layout you've made, you can actually save it and then import a new one. So say you want to share your layout with your friends, you can actually import one of their profiles, basically, that they have created, which is pretty darn cool. And the final thing is zoom. Now, this is quite nice if you are looking at some of these smaller, more fidgety elements, or wanting to mainly work in one corner of the screen. You can just click on one of the quadrants, and it'll zoom in to that location, which is pretty darn good. And you can simply zoom out by double-clicking. Now, alternatively, with the zoom, you can also double-click to zoom in, rather than just double-clicking to zoom out, so it's quite easy to do that. But yes, it's a little bit finicky with the zooming in and out because, well, as you can see here, it really only seems to default to this quadrant of the screen. So if I do double click over here, you would expect it to go over this direction, but no, it goes here. But we can also just click and drag to move around on the screen as well for your movement. So, there's a couple of different options there, which is pretty handy. But let's zoom back out and take a look at the options for individual elements. Now, you may have noticed when I was hovering over some of these, it does highlight and then give you a context menu for that particular highlighted thing. Now this context menu is quite important because it will showing you the basic info on this, some of your controls, and also things like maybe you don't want that UI element. I don't know why you wouldn't want quick loot on, but hey, you can hide that if you so desire. And if, for instance, say you've done a lot of edits to this thing and too many for revert last change, if maybe you just wanted to go back to its default, well, we can just click in there and reset, and boom, it goes back to its defaulted position. Now, we do have these buttons here, which are actually allowing you to move the item, but you have, again, like with the zooming, two options for this. You can just click and drag this wherever you want it to be, or you can use these buttons. Now, they are far more for fine-tuning, as you have to click these arrows each time, and it'll basically move it 1 pixel down on the screen. It's much easier to click and drag it like so, and then fine-tune it from here, because you can't click and hold. It is a simple click, 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 click to move it in that direction. Now, you'll notice we also have the scaling here, defaulted to 100%, and you just simply use the mouse wheel to make this thing larger or smaller. And you also have the option to rotate it if you just hold down Control and then mouse wheel. Well, look at that. You can rotate this thing around and have it at some weird, wonky angle to give yourself a more stylized experience here in the game. Again, pretty neat. And then at the bottom, we have some of the other context options that'll be different depending on the UI element. So for this one, the quick loot container, we can hide the name of the container. We can hide the buttons that'll show up down at the bottom there. We can hide the bracket, which is the box in the container, and also hide the background. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a few moments though. And again, it's context-based, so of course we don't have those same sorts of things for the compass. We can just hide the background or hide the brackets, because of course, well, we don't have buttons and names and stuff like that. Now, I gotta admit, it's kind of weird having some of these options sometimes. Like, for instance, if we go to the quest one, and in the subtitles, you can actually turn off the text of the subtitle, thus defeating the entire purpose of a subtitle, which is weird, but okay, if that's what you want, just the person's name, or hey, you can also turn off their name if you so desire. So yeah, you got a lot of fun, neat little options there, and again, the ability to just grab any object, move it around to wherever you like, reset it, rotate it, rescale it, and just a lot of cool things there. And even the ability for, on some, like on the quest updates, the ability to center these rather than having it to its defaulted bit there, which can be a little bit screwy. As you can see, centering seems to actually be popping it off the screen a bit, but you know what, you can do whatever you want. That's the whole point of being able to edit your UI. It's pretty darn cool. Now, one thing you'll kind of notice down at the bottom, that these changes won't take effect until you reload your game. You are going to have to, whenever you do want to make these changes, you're going to want to save your game prior to making a change, and then reload your game. And as you can see from here, quick loading won't work. It has to be a proper save file. Not sure entirely why that is, that the quick loads don't work, but that is the case. And again, you know, after you're done editing, you can save it to one of these profiles or default to another random thing around the place. It's all up to you. Now, after this, which again is the main meat and potatoes of this whole thing, we do also have a few other options over here as well. So in general settings, they're pretty important here, especially you're with like a much different aspect ratio monitor. You do have the ability to change what the aspect ratio is, the ability to adjust layout to the screen aspect, and to force a def HUD if you are using a Fall-UI, which I am not, so that's not a problem for me. Now, the backgrounds are an interesting thing. We did see that one option earlier when we were looking at the quick loot. The game has some built-in rendered backgrounds that you can turn on or off here, and replace them with a new flash background, which is built in for this. And you can change the opacity of that as you desire. Apparently this is the ability to turn this on or off, because I guess for wider screens, as you can see here, it can cause some graphical problems. I'm just using 16:9, so that's not really an issue for me. Now, next is the messages, and this is pretty handy for, well, you know, the option here. The first one we have is the maximum number of messages that can be on the screen at any point in time. Defaulted to 10, but you can make that a little fewer or more, however you desire. And also change the timer for how long it'll take for a message to fade in seconds. We then have the ability to turn on or off the message animation, and to also use an internal message buffer to help prevent the game blocks due to too many issues. Just a nice little extra thing. And finally, we have rollover and quick loot, and these are in, for the, trying to... Oh yes, I can just hover over and see the thing at the bottom. The colored icon library. So you can allow for colored icons for the rollover items, the display items, and change some of the things like the hint scale opacity for that, which is quite handy. Again, I'm like with the Fall-UI, I'm not using the color icon library, so not an issue for me, but nice that we do have these options so that all of these different layout bits will also be affected by those different icon library elements. So just a nice, neat little thing. But yes, the main thing here is this, and it is magnificent. Just so much control over where you have everything, what it does look like for you. It's just a very fun thing to have, and pretty easy to use. So if you'd like to take a look at this for yourself, which I'd certainly recommend you do, you have a look at the link in the description as per usual, my friends. But that really is all there is to go over with this mod, so hopefully you have enjoyed this one today, and you come back for the next, when the quick loot will just consume the whole world. But until that time, thank you for watching, folks, and as always, have a good one.